Welcome everyone to another episode of Round the Block Talk. Today we have with us Mr. Raghu Raj. He's the founder at Monkhub and has been working in the space of blockchain technology from the past 6 to 7 years. So very happy to have you here with us, Mr. Raghu, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep. So I'll just quickly introduce you about myself. So I'm Raghu, and I run a company called Monkhub Innovations that is majorly working into the emerging technology domain, mostly around blockchain, metaverses, and gaming. So that's our major area of work. So we have been developing multiple products around the same domains since last 5 years, more than 5 years actually. So that's a quick introduction. These days, I'm very much into the metaverse space. So there are multiple projects that we are doing in this space. There are certain problems there that are existing there, which will be catered over the period of time. There are new approaches towards solving problem toward human internet connection that is being taken by the metaverse. So that is something of my core interest, and I'm mostly working around it these days.
Right, that's great to know. So now, Raghu, moving forward to our topic of discussion today. So we would really like to understand from you what kind of work Monkhub has been involved in. And as you mentioned, you've been working in the space of metaverse. So it will be great if you can introduce our audience to this concept and the kind of work you're doing at Monkhub.
So primarily, there are multiple projects we are involved in, but mostly I'd like to talk about our internal metaverse project that we are working on right now. So it's basically a metaverse infrastructure platform that we are building. The architecture is something sort of multiple interconnected virtual cities. So first of all, before getting too much into metaverse, what we are doing, I would like to quickly give a perspective around what is metaverse from my perspective. That how I see it is, it's nothing but the metaverse is just we would say more intuitive 3D based 3D based interface for humans to connect with internet and interact there, and for social engagements or content consumption or any other such use cases. So that is just right now. I see internet as a mesh of pages. Although there are 2D spaces, I would say more, but they are interconnected pages. You go on one page and it is linked to other page. But how in real world we operate with the world is there is a 3D space. We go to a shop to buy something, or maybe visit a friend in their space. Although right now also we are here in a digital space where we are connected through video, but that's not that immersive. Also, it has a lot of potential. Why it is also hyped a lot, because a lot of immersive tech is also coming up with the advent of AR and VR and all those things, and with especially there's a lot of positive sentiments after the Oculus Quest 2 adoption. Earlier, the adoption was not that great, but still there is a lot of issue in engagement there. But still, the sales of Oculus Quest 2 has been quite good as compared to any other VR devices. So that is also that completely virtual world where we'll be interacting with other people in the form of avatars and all the sort of things. That picture is portrayed of metaverse, but to keep things simple, we should I take it as mostly it can be any platform, either mobile application or a desktop application, or on Oculus or any AR glasses or something like that. So it can be interactive, but ultimately the architecture of the content that you are consuming is in a 3D world like scenarios where we can move around, meet people, etc., etc. So that's there. So coming back to the project that I'm majorly working on is a Metaverse Infrastructure platform, which is kind of the architecture lies. There are multiple interconnected cities. Uh, each city is a virtual world, and mostly each city is acts like a country. There are citizenships, etc., etc., and all those things are happening. Now it's like there are multiple communities who would be building their virtual spaces on top of that, correct? And there would be certain specialization of each city. Maybe one of the city could be so there's this one um, uh, company that we are in talks with who wants to build one city is mostly they want to create a space for NFT artists and a complete community around it. So you see, a city also represents a community, a specific type of community. That okay, so it's like that. If I am here in a particular city, let's say I'm in Silicon Valley or in San Francisco or something, there is a huge ecosystem of startups. So the value lies there as well. So now, mostly some of them are trying to create values around the same stuff where there are NFT artists all around, and you can talk to them. You can so mostly the entry would be limited to these artists. So that is just one form. There's one uh, organization that we're in talk with who wants to create a city for spirituality sort of thing. So there are wide variety of stuff that people. There's one fashion district somebody's trying to open up. So that is the kind of thing. But our major focus is around creating the infrastructure on top of which these experiences can be built easily. So the core functionality like the identity of user through avatars, their movements, spatial audio, or proximity based communication that you go close to an avatar and talk to them, just like we. So all these things are there. Kind of maybe there's a concert, and how the concert works is like broadcasting audio content from a stage to all the audiences there, or maybe a educational classroom sort of thing where a teacher is teaching the kids, or maybe an office. So there can be office where we are working together. There are different cabins and rooms where just like we actually work in some sort of a digital experience where there are multiple rooms in our organization going on where multiple meetings are happening around at the same time. Just like in office rooms, there are meeting rooms, etc., etc. So these are the multiple use cases, but more or less the technology remains the same. And we are trying to build that technology layer, and where on top of which these digital experiences can be created. Also, every city will be having a DAO for governance part. So that is also something interesting part that is going on. So the basic rule setting up of the city that okay, this kind of activity can be carried out or not, or all those things can be governed by the DAO, where all the members of the city would be voting for a particular thing. So let's say somebody wants to come up with a 18 plus content. So whether that city allows it or not allows it, that would be depending on the DAO voting or something like that. Or what if there are some, maybe let's say some religious spaces could be created or not created into this city. So all these decision making sort of things could be done through a DAO. So that is something that. So yeah, this is a high level overview of the project that majorly I'm focused on right now.
Sure, that's great to know. So now you mentioned you're building an infrastructure for Metaverse. So in terms of technology, what are the kind of things that you need to keep in mind, and what are the kind of things that you need to develop to prepare this infrastructure? So as you mentioned, decentralized identity and probably wallet integrations. And so, what are the kind of things which are necessary to build this?
Yeah, so there are actually lots and lots of challenges here. So there are first and the foremost challenge. I would categorize the type of challenges. First of all, the first type of challenge that is from the user experience point of view. So you see these wallets, etc., are difficult for everybody to use because everybody is not very comfortable with using long public addresses and just making transactions. And people are a bit paranoid while making some transactions. They fear that okay, if the Bitcoin might go to some other wallet, I will lose a lot of wealth. So that kind of things we are so like common man is not very proficient in making crypto transactions or something like that, or maybe buying the NFT or selling NFT land, or there is a very limited set of users. Now making that whole process smooth. Also, there is a lot of element that there's a decision making that is done from the user experience point of view. For example, should we have a custodial wallet or not? But having a custodial wallet that we are managing their private keys and they are just using through their, but that actually is against the ethos of the decentralization because ultimately there is some party who is managing. So whether to take that kind of step because that limits a lot of user registration and user onboarding, correct? Maybe so. What kind of so we go for a hybrid approach? There is like you can have a decentralized wallet, non-custodial wallet, or you can have a custodial wallet. So that is from the so these kind of problems I would say user experience bottlenecks or issues I would say, and that needs to be handled through process, through design process, through defining the right functionality of the product. So that is mostly from that side. Then the second and the major bucket I would say is the tech budget. So there are lots of tech constraint. So one of the major difference between the current form of internet and the current internet-based application is that it's mostly 2D. Correct, all the screens are 2D. Maybe you use any application, maybe you use Netflix or you use WhatsApp or you use any other application. It's a 2D UI sort of thing where you click everything and then so that is light. Okay, as compared to the 3D space, these assets are very heavy. So there are two challenges. One thing is downloading those heavy assets. So let's say whenever you click on something, let's say you click on a Netflix, that okay, you want to watch this movie, or let's say you want to watch so see the summary of this movie. So that let's say it takes hardly 2, 3, 4 seconds, and then it comes up. So that is in that time downloading happens. But if let's say you want to go to one space that is not there in your system, correct? So that needs to be downloaded, and that takes time. That experience is let's say 30 seconds. So that is not a great experience. So you need to manage something that okay, these kind of things should be available. How, for example, how Decentraland is managing this thing is it downloads the city in the vicinity of your current position, the 3D assets in background, and it renders as you move around the space. So that is one sort of a solution there. So that is there. Also, the second thing is choosing a platform. So let's say if you are building for masses. So let's say either it will be mobile or laptop. For example, these are the major things. Mobile is so now again with mobile comes the kind of 3D art that you would be using there. So there is a lot of constraint because of the limited processing power. So the graphics, the quality of the graphics needs to be different for mobile. It needs to be different from because in laptop also there are two things whether it is a browser based or an application based. So either if you are going for an application based system, then although it can use a lot of memory of your system, etc., and a lot of performance issues can be resolved. But if you are using on a browser and rendering those 3D elements, because browser also has a very limited memory, and handling all those sort of things is difficult. All the people are trying it. Now there's this very interesting thing that has happened in this space is a technology called pixel streaming has come up where The application is hosted in a cloud server for you, and it is streamed just like a video on your web on your web page. Correct. So right now, let's say I am browsing, I am navigating a 3D space. So all those things are happening in that cloud server, correct, where the application is running and the 3D things are rendering. That is a much powerful machine that what I am using. And now that is being streamed as a video. So all my controls are being talking to that server and everything is happening. And then the pixel streaming is done through that. So right now for browser, it is very easy to handle. But right now, the cost of such, because for each user you need to deploy one server, and then
Mhm.
that is so. Right now, there are some companies that have came up. Couple of companies are there. So, but the cost of doing that is very high right now. For example, the cost is in the tune of $2 to $3 per user per hour usage. So let's say if there are 10 users coming up in a particular space and they're using that pixel streaming for 1 hour. So you could assume that you'd be spending $20 to $30. So that is not sustainable for building a product for masses. So you need to think around that as well. So these are some real world challenges. So obviously, when you build a city, there are hundreds and thousands of buildings. There 3D experience there. There can be a casino where you are building poker rooms, etc. There can be a classroom where you are teaching kids. There can be a museum where there are things done. So now these asset size becomes very high. So now handling those, because your device also have a limited space. Correct. It's mostly it's 512 GB or 1 TB. You can't fill 500 GB or 1 TB of with just one application, that asset if you're using. So there needs to be a limited amount of data that is stored in your device, and that needs to be managed along based on your usage in the 3D space. So yeah, these are some of the key challenges. And then the third one is mostly the growth challenges. So user adoption, bringing user, onboarding them, making them learn. So that is also one of the key challenges there. Okay, let's say if it is a laptop application. So for gamers, it's very easy. You can use your mouse to move around, WASD or the arrow keys to move around to the space. Correct. That kind of things are easy. But for somebody who is not into the gaming, who has never done gaming, and who just wants to use it as a kind of a work metaverse sort of thing and want to attend meetings there in that metaverse. So it's a bit difficult for them to use those keyboards and just like make the avatar walk or something like that. What is the best way there? There are multiple approaches coming up. Uh, so user adoption is also one thing that okay, why somebody would be coming there, and so that is mostly from the growth perspective. But obviously there is a one good thing also there. There's a lot of hype about metaverse, so people are willing to try a lot of things. Metaverse brands are looking to do something in metaverse, so that is actually fueling the overall growth of this space. So yeah,
Right,
that's
indeed.
about yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, that's great to know. So now also you will be handling out land parcels, and the ownership is again on blockchain through wallets. So what kind of technological implementation is required to enable that? And how does the ownership in Metaverse works?
So ownership. So if you see, usually there are contracts, smart contracts, which actually mints NFTs. So usually the architecture, if you see any NFT marketplaces or architecture at the contract level is more or less same. There is a factory contract which actually mints the NFT, where you can mint a new collection, could be a new factory contract, or and then based on certain items, whatever you are minting, that is there. It is also kind of stored the data, the 3D asset or maybe the 2D image, whatever you are minting NFT, that is usually stored in IPFS, which is a decentralized storage. And obviously there is a metadata also stored in that decentralized storage. And that is there. So this is usually using a factory contract, and then usually there is a escrow contract where it is transferred whenever you want to sell or you want to auction. And then if you want to sell, you set up a price, and anybody comes up in that escrow contract and pays up that price, that it got transferred. So that is hard-coded logic in the contract itself, or whosoever gets a maximum bid in the stipulated amount of time would be getting that in case of auction. So that is how a standard NFT marketplace works. It's a very 30,000 feet view I'm giving you. There are lots of details. So usually, I would say there are multiple contracts that are working together. It can be minting contract, that is factory contract, or lots of escrow contract sort of thing where multiple parties are coming up and saying DAOs is one of the things. So the voting part. So right now we have created basic, you can say, basic metaverse legal framework sort of thing. You would say that okay, these are the things. In this case, this is the basic thing that would happen. Although somewhat, I would say, corresponding to constitution, but very concise and very compressed and very kind of binary level of constitution. You would say there are few options, and then these are the things that would be happening, and based on that, and now linking all those things to your application. So that is also one more thing, that how things now, a lot of things. So for example, so we are creating different type of utilities. For example, these are kind of gaming assets, or these are NFT tickets, or these are, so let's say NFT tickets. Take an example of an NFT ticket, that would be easier to explain. So with the NFT tickets, it would be like you created those NFT tickets, and it is completely linked to your application, uh, specifically to the entry access module. So let's say you want to access this place. So you have this ticket or this NFT ticket, and you can enter this place at this particular time or between this to this time. So let's say there is a conference going on, or there is a concert going on. So I bought a ticket. So this is a ticket module that is done, and the properties of ticket are defined in the metadata in the NFT, and that is standardized. So standardization is one of the key elements that we look into. That needs to be standardized, and based on that, the utility in the world is embedded with the similar functionality. So whenever you are minting an NFT, it can be a type of NFT. It is a game asset. It can be a ticket. It can be physically backed NFT. So these categorization and these nomenclature we are coming, although all these things are done. So there are lots of things like fractionalized NFT is also very becoming popular these days. So like, and that actually which represents a real world asset, maybe a property, or any other real world asset. And these are fractionalized into NFTs, and each owner of these NFTs are each owner of these NFT owns a piece of that real world asset. So that sort of scenarios are also there. So depending on the type of NFTs and their application in the their implementation in the application side is something how it is designed. Usually there are few items where there is something rule-based systems. Mostly it's a rule-based systems, and the rule can also be changed. The level of flexibility that you want to provide, and that is managed through DAOs. And there are voting systems, who is allowed to vote and who can vote to change this thing, etc. That is defined in the contracts itself. So that is, I think, something we are working
Right, indeed. So now this becomes an ecosystem. This particularly this ownership, everything is on NFT, and everything has its own properties. So you probably require several formats of smart contracts, and every NFT is becomes a new kind of a smart contract. So to enable this kind of an economy now, I am assuming a lot of development needs to be done in terms of smart contract, how they will interact. So tell us more about that and how is that enabled?
So we have taken this approach as templatization, what I would say. So we have created template for token creation. Let's say there is a city and they want to create their own economy. They want to mint some amount of token. So there are multiple contracts, templates that we have. So if this, they want to mint simple, let's say 100 million tokens, and that's all. Now, so for that, there is a contract template, and we can just enter that, okay, this is the symbol and this is the thing. And then it can be entered and deployed, and that contract, city has these many tokens, and this the custodian of these are the wallets who are custodian of these tokens. Now, there are scenarios where there is a vesting period as well. Correct. So let's say there's a vesting model. So now there is a separate contract template for that as well. So most of there are 4 to 5 such different use cases. So this is just for token minting part. Now for NFT minting part, for type of things, we have multiple such contracts, and based on because see we if we are looking to create a massive digital space, it's not like we can create custom things for everything and then also merge it with the application side where there are 3D worlds and people are working, which has a lot of centralized element and which are managed through centralized databases. Most of things, the critical things like ownership of land, ownership of digital asset, etc., are kept on the blockchain side of things. But real-time movement, etc., is controlled by a centralized systems there as well. So you cannot go that. So with all these items, so templatization is something that I would say for different case scenarios and how that needs to be used, and compatibility of all these template with our application. So that is something we are working on. So that is defining all the cases, different type of items. So let's say there are 3 frameworks of governance, the basic governance. So the basic governance is just like the citizens of a city as well as landowners can vote in for the governors. There are n number of governors that are there, and each governor is responsible for 4 items. Correct. So these are the 4 items where their voting would be counted to make a policy change level, maybe something like, okay, anybody, these kind of things could be done, or maybe setting up any experience on England requires approval of the governors, yes or no. Just like you go to a city municipal commission, municipal corporation or municipality for approval of the type of building that you are building on a particular land, what is the floor area ratio, etc., that kind of things. You do in railroad, a simplistic form of that. Okay, so these are the governors. So we'll be using their validation would be required, and how many of them, let's say 3 out of 5 are required or something like that, that can be set up at the time of setting up of that city, and that can be changed obviously by voting. So all these numbers can be changed, and there are some certain items there. So these kind of mostly I would say DAOs. These are more or less not exactly DAO, but mostly inspired by DAO structures, standard DAO structures. But a lot of other things are as well there. So now these kind of things are there. So there are 3 major framework of governance that we have come up with right now. So that is we are working with right now. So depends on city. Let's say I along with maybe 5 other people, I wanted to create a new city on our platform. So they'll come up and they'll set up that, okay, this is the governance protocol we'll be using. So uh, that is there, and this is the governance framework we'll be using. And then obviously you can, there's one framework and then there is one detailing, the fine tuning. So the details of it, okay, this is allowed or not allowed. Anybody could enter this space, or only the citizen of this city can enter the space. So these are just yes or no sort of answers, and there are lots of such settings, I would say, that can be controlled by the governors. And then the selection of governors, is it a autocratic sort of thing or it is a democratic sort of a setup? So yeah, so that is something. And then it's let's say, so these kind of contracts are there, and now the and everything should be integrated with the application side. So the compatibility with the application, the 3D space where you are moving, you are experiencing everything is there. So mostly we create templates and we make sure that this particular template is compatible with our application side. So both the blockchain side and the 3D experience side needs to work hand in hand to make real sense.
Right, indeed. So now you mentioned about the governance in your ecosystem. So what kind of tokenomics are you building for that? So usually we've seen people have to stake their coins in order to participate, in order to vote. And so, I would really like to understand the tokenomics you're imagining,
So
both in the
so mostly we are flexible around it. So we are not working on the tokenomics exactly, but we are creating platform for people to create their tokenomics. So every city could create their own tokenomics and their own system there. Correct. So we are just creating that framework as I explained you. So this is the amount of token that is being issued. Will this be vested or not? All these needs to be decided by them, and based on that, the economy of that city, the tokenomics of that city would be functioning, and that is there. So we are just creating the frameworks for these cities to create all these items. We're not creating exactly, although we might be coming up with our native token, so that is still not finalized. So if that is then we'll be having our own tokenomics, etc. But there are lots of things that we need to look around for creating tokens, etc. So that is still not finalized.
right, indeed. So also, what blockchain are you using? What is the blockchain infrastructure that you're using
So
and
mostly
basing your metaverse on?
So right now we are uh, uh, creating for EVM based blockchains. So mostly Ethereum is there, but only for mostly it might be used for land management. So, but mostly we are building things considering Polygon and BNB, BSC, Finance Smart Chain. Correct. So these are the two major chains because see in the metaverse the cost of transaction needs to be low because it's not like for example Ethereum will cost me more than $50 to just make a transaction. So let's say if I want to buy a sword, a digital sword in a let's say a metaverse game, and that would just transaction would cost me $50, and so it's not fit for micro transactions, right? So mostly layer two solutions like Polygon is a good one. So we are mostly working on EVM based technologies, so mostly solidity based contract development. So these are the things that we are working on. So yeah.
Right, indeed. And
And
so you're building, yeah,
yeah, and idea is to create support for more and more blockchains. So we might be looking for moving into Solana as well as other blockchains in future. So right now the focus is on uh, EVM based blockchain. So any of those we can support because most of them work in the same way. The code base is more or less the same, the structure is same. So yeah, so but mostly we are focusing on Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, and Polygon.
right, indeed. So as you mentioned, you're building the infrastructure. So what kind of final uh, layout would you be providing to the customer? So is it a no-code kind of an setup where someone can build metaverse, or would it require developers to interact with your platform?
So it's not a no-code platform. It may be a low-code platform. It would be a low-code platform to be precise, but there would be some level of coding. Uh, so we are mostly building things. It's a Unity-based engine. Unity is what we are using as a 3D engine for most of things. Right now, there are lots of things that needs to be done in Unity for the developers to work on. Although we are not opened up for, or we are not opening up for external developers in near term. So it would take at least more than a year or year and a half before we launch something for external developers to work and build something on top of our platform. It would be mostly a collaboration based system where also, there are things that we are working on where builder tool is something that we are looking for, but there are lots of restrictions there, lots of from the creative side. Because see, what we have seen is most of people that are coming into metaverse space are mostly from the experience side of things, how they look in 3D experience, how what kind of amazing experience they can see. So while creating a builder tool or something, that is restricted a lot. Okay, you can create a very squarish boxes of rooms where you can place some items, etc., etc., and things are there. And if you want to make it very flexible, that development would take a huge bit of time. But obviously, we want to be a dual support system where there can be a builder tool also. So that is something we have not started working on, but we'll be soon taking up that challenge as well, and creating a builder tool for creating simple experiences on top of any land. So there are some there again the template sort of system like say office structure or maybe a auditorium or a conference hall or maybe a classroom or maybe a, casino or a gaming room sort of thing, which can be implemented easily just in few clicks or in a no code way.
Right, indeed. And what kind of customers do you imagine using your platform, or do you already have some people ready to use it?
No, not we have a lot of people we onboarded with us, but right now the product is under development. So I would say it will take another 6 months before we launch our first alpha version, to be precise. And then we'll be so the first city that we are building for ourselves, so that we are only building there. We have some collaborations with few organizations who are actively participating in this thing. But before going out to anybody, we want to get the first city done and ready and take up to a certain level before moving to the outside world.
Right, indeed. So also to support such an infrastructure, such a metaverse infrastructure requires probably it needs to handle a lot of transaction. It needs to handle a lot of traffic. And so, in terms of technology, what are the challenges in terms of these factors? And is the technology ready today? And are you also do you also is it also required for you to work on the technology end of it, the blockchain further, or how does that work?
Technology is, I would say, most of things are ready in pieces. Correct. So the blockchain technology, how the blockchain transactions or how the smart contract would be working, they work very well in many of the cases. There are lots of 3D experience that okay, managing concurrent users, 50,000, 100,000, million concurrent users. So that sort of things are there. So these also has been demonstrated by tier one gaming companies. So and it's not from today; it has been from ages, from last 5-10 years. There are a lot of multiplayer gaming that has evolved with very high CCUs that they have managed to achieve. So that is something. So I would say that kind of things have been achieved in pieces. Uh, Although I haven't seen any metaverse in present day who are having million active users at a certain point of time. So obviously you see first of all handling those million users, so kind of real time positioning them. So and also the metaverse that you need to keep the position and create a channel for their communication if they are in proximity, who can listen to whom, etc., based on their things, then who can enter all those things. So a lot of networking based things are required. Right. So, kind of uh, real time solutions are required for these things. So, there are multiple approaches that we are taking for it, as well as lot of other things are there. Handling the 3D, already I mentioned the challenges in handling the size of 3D. Downloading it in real time is a real problem. So also there will be a lot of expectations from 5G rollouts, that okay, 5G will actually help a lot of this kind of products to fly, as well as a lot of AR VR applications also are waiting for the 5G rollouts. So that is something there. So yeah, so that's mostly around it. Then there's a communication, there's a kind of VoIP sort of things all around, video chats all around. So obviously, once the platform grows, so we have also kept that system in a very decentralized way. So for city, there are different a kind of a modular structure for each city. So it's not that like all the loads come into just one place. So that also we have considered a lot in the architecture, the technical architecture side of things. So that is taken care. And I think ecosystem is quite evolved there to manage so many users. And in the last 10-15 years, we have seen a huge transformation in building digital products, how we used to build earlier on, how we used to build. And apart from there, lots of third-party tools for everything. If you think about anything, there exists a third-party tool which you can obviously use for a particular purpose.
Right, indeed. So, some of the things that I could understand, you would probably like to enable with the infrastructure would be a creator economy, decentralized identities, asset ownership, then a DAO, and then the metaverse as well. So, can you give us an overview of the architecture, technology architecture that is required to support this product?
So technology at the base level, it's what we are using is Unity. Anybody can use Unity or Unreal Engine or any other such 3D engine to, or they can create their own. Some of them are putting like, for example, Roblox created their own 3D engine. So it's very optimized 3D engine, something like which maybe in Unity it would take 100 MBs and it does, and the compression and all these things does in 5-7 MBs sort of thing. So that is the key USP of Roblox with which it grew. But yeah, coming back to the main point, so that is the base layer. So for any engine, you want to create your own or go with the existing ones, Unity, Unreal, etc. So that is the base layer, I would say. Then comes communication. So there are, you can create your you can create your own system. You can, there are lots of solutions around in the cloud ecosystem. So all these AWS and Google Cloud, everybody has these kind of a inbuilt, so kind of ready-made products around for creating channels for communications, etc. There is voice chat and video chat. There are lots of products in the market like Agora, etc., etc. You can also use your own WebRTC sort, that is open source one, and actually the deployment you get in complete as a productization is there in AWS or even Google Cloud as well as Azure, any of these cloud service providers, I would say. So these are usually used for communication, audio as well as video. Then comes the networking part. So there is there are multiple solutions. One of the primary thing with Unity is Photon engine, used for uh, managing the user location and user coordinates, and then the movement around the space. So that is the now. So these are mostly from the experience side, the 3D side of the things, and at the back end there is a usual back end there with databases, as well as there are some component is centralized, as I earlier mentioned. Major component which are done in real time are centralized. like their location coordinates, where they enter, etc., etc. They're allowed to enter, entry access management, and then there's a linkage to the blockchain module as well, where they check, okay, whether this guy holds an NFT ticket or not to make them enter into this particular space. So that is one thing. Or whether this, let's say, I want to deploy a, a building on top of a land, so that would check that, okay, whether this user has a ownership of this land or not. So I need to authenticate with my wallet that, okay, this, I am the owner of this wallet, and this wallet, the land NFT resides in this particular wallet. Correct. So that is there. So this is the part of the DC. So key asset management, or key asset that is managed in a decentralized way, where the user owns these things in their wallet, as well as the rest. Every other thing is kept in our databases, and that is managed through our web services. So that's more or less about a very high level of architecture. So there are a lot more things I could say, but I'm just trying to limit things for the simplicity.
Right, that's great. And in terms of the storage, is it how much of it is distributed on IPFS, and is it centralized also, or is it completely distributed?
So mostly IPFS is
How do you manage that?
we are using mostly IPFS for storing the NFTs. So maybe a 3D asset or a 2D asset, any digital, it's a digital file that we are storing, and against that file we are creating an NFT. So NFT is nothing but a certificate of ownership of that file, self certificate of ownership of that particular file, and that is uploaded. So for that we are using there. Rest all the environments, the 3D city environment, etc., we are keeping it centralized. But that is, any change in that is subjected to uh, uh, the wallet ownership of that particular space. So whosoever owns that land, so that kind of validations are completely kept there. So all those things are there, and then the it's directly linked to smart contract as well at certain points. So yeah.
Right. And so, how does hosting on IPFS work? Because again, some people are kind of giving out their storage. So how does it? What does it cost to host on IPFS, and how does that work?
So IPFS is quite cheap. So it actually does not cost much. So there is a native token for this IPFS, which you need to pay for a certain storage. There is a pinning service that, okay, there are kind of, just to retrieve it fast, there's pinning services, you need to set up a server for that. So, and also there's a third party solutions like Pinata, etc., for pinning services for IPFS. So that is there. But apart from it, it's not a major service. So something like, would say, a S3 bucket, it's actually cheaper than the S3 bucket storage in AWS.
Right. So if a user holds and now because it is stored on IPFS, so does the user have to pay something on a regular basis for the storage, or they can just hold it?
Yeah, so they can hold it. So that's how. So for basic things, there's no such payments. What I assume, although I'm not pretty confident about that, but mostly I think there is no payments for basic set of things. But obviously for pinning services and all those sort of things, you need to make a payment in the native token.
Sure, Raghu. So with that, Raghu, thank you very much for your time, and it was great to host you on our Around the Block talk show.
Okay, thank you, Pratik. It was nice speaking to you.